I'm Kat Parnell, and I'm with Birchbark Editing, and it is my great pleasure to be with you this October evening in 2023, where we're bringing to you an author I've long admired, Danuta Hinc. But before we get to Danuta's reading and some questions that we all have for her, I wanted to let you know a little bit about Birchbark. We offer editing services. We publish a literary magazine called Microlit Almanac. We also publish reviews, and a review of Danuta's book was published not too long ago by Les Schofield. So if you're interested, you will find that on our website. We also offer workshops. One of the workshops that we offer is called Mix and Meet. We meet once a month, and people respond to very quick prompts. We also offer classes, we offer events, lots of things. Please do check our website for more information. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Danuta. She is a Polish-American award-winning novelist, short story writer, and essayist. She holds an MA in philology from the University of Gdańsk in Poland, pardon my pronunciation, where her dissertation titled Historia Literary, and Danuta, you are going to have to fill us in on this later, won the Polish national competition for the best dissertation in the humanities. She holds an MFA in writing and literature from Bennington College, where she received the Barry Hannah Merit Scholarship in Fiction. I remember the day. She completed 3 years of post-grad studies at the Institute of Literary Research of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Now, here's the thing about the book that we're talking about tonight. It was translated from the Polish by the author, and an earlier version of the book was published under the title To Kill the Other, which, if you haven't read that book, I strongly recommend it. It's a great one. And without further ado, let's turn this over to Danuta. Thank you. You're muted, Danuta.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Kat, for this nice introduction. So I would like to start by reading 2 excerpts from the novel. The first one is from the time when the twins are, Taher and Aisha are about 6 years old. And then the second one is about the time of their lives when they are about 30 years old. So we see kind of the dynamic and the relationship they have, the closeness, and how they are sort of growing together and growing apart within those 2 excerpts. So the first one is when the twins are 6 years old, about 6 years old. For the children, the garden has its own mysteries that are revealed in the deepest corners, behind the azalea thick with heavy and sweet blooms. One day the mysteries reveal themselves as the fear and helplessness of the spider's prey, seeping slowly through the tight cocoon when Taher tries to free a butterfly. Tiri! Go, he cries as loud as he can, throwing the sticky and motionless body in the air, still hoping, not yet grasping the radical power of death. Another day, the mysteries come in a form of discovering the forbidden, when Aisha crawls under the bush and helps grandmother Rumaisa's favorite cat deliver her naked and defenseless kittens. Cat-cow, pussycat. Aisha reaches for them without hesitation. Mesh, come here. She crawls on her stomach. Don't be afraid. Mesh, she says, stroking the soft fur stained with blood. My little babies. She embraces the huddled, squealing blind creatures with pride and gratitude for having witnessed a beginning of new life. The day Aisha confesses her envy to Tahir and they are alone in the garden, tired from running, they decide to rest on the edge of the flower pool. The air, thick with sweetness, hovers in the sweltering sun, slowing their breaths, filling their bodies with blissful weight. Receding behind the tall palm trees, the sun throws long lines across the flower pools. The day, closing slowly to the Al-Maghr prayer, evokes silent anticipation. Tahir closes his eyes and tilts his head slightly back and to the side, and his imagination takes over. He arises like a bird or a cloud, lightly and silently, with no effort. He stretches out his arms and glides towards the highest roofs, where he stops for a while to look at the minaret shimmering on the background of the clearest sky, and the silver surface of the lake, surrounded by white beaches at the edge of the city. After his eyes finally feel satisfied with all he wanted to see in the distance, he steers himself above the roof to find the long swords of palm leaves that strayed into the drain pipe. Controlling every single movement of the descent, he lowers himself and reaches for the leaves. He picks them up gently between his fingers and studies their rough surface, always with the same astonishment. They are drying up already, he whispers, and busies himself with finding more and more different colors, from greens to dark browns, depending on how much time they spent in the blazing sun. He inhales deeply, the high air filled with the smell of the sea. The sun is lowering itself to close the day with a silent, gentle breath of a soft breeze when suddenly Tahir is jolted by cold blades. Only after he opens his eyes, he understands it is water. Aisha laughs, hitting the surface of the water in the flower pool, splashing her brother and screaming, "Wake up, Tahir, wake up!" "You are so stupid," he screams, jumping off the edge. "Me?" She laughs louder and hits the surface of the water with all her might. The white fans spring towards Tahir faster and faster, darkening the edge of the pool, and the polished river rocks covering the path under their feet. "Stop it!" Tahir yells, moving back and wiping his face. "You are stupid." "And you sleep all the time," she mocks his voice. "I don't," Tahir defends himself. "I don't sleep. I think." "About what?" She doesn't give up. "Making up silly stories again?" "You are jealous." He knows how to hurt her. A long silence falls over the garden. Aisha wipes her hands on her dress and starts to pick at her nails. For a while, she looks at the goblets of the lotus flowers and the flat leaves speckled with fast-drying drops of water. And then she moves her gaze to the pebbles on the path, to the tips of the trees. Kicking her right foot in the air, she stays silent. "It's different for you, Aisha." Tahir sits down next to her. "It's different because you are a girl," he says softly. "They all see only you." She looks him straight in the eye. "They cheer only you. Tahir is a true miracle. He memorized the Quran. Tahir, Tahir, Tahir. And you are the faster runner, remember? And also," Tahir doesn't finish. She jumps off the edge as if on fire. "Do you always have to be such a saint?" She screams, stamping her foot. "I'm not a saint." "You are," she interrupts him again, stomping her foot one more time. "And you are too." He spreads his arms helplessly. "No, I am not. I'm not, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be good. I don't want to, and I don't want to be myself. She holds back her tears, shivering. What are you talking about? Tahir takes a step towards her. You are crazy. You are crazy. You, like everyone else. She screams, running towards the thick azalea bushes in the farthest corner of the garden. So that's the first excerpt, and the second is from the time when they are about 30 years old. When Aisha calls, Tahir jumps and accidentally kicks the table. After composing himself, he looks around, embarrassed. Luckily, no one at the restaurant pays any attention to him. He's not used to carrying a cell phone in his pocket, and every time it rings, it startles him. He's sitting on a patio with a view of the mosque of Muhammad Ali in Cairo. In the distance, the dome looks white, and the two tallest minarets are silver. In front of him is a plate with 2 pieces of kunafa, a blue teapot, a sugar bowl, and a glass of black tea. Did I startle you again? Aisha asks. I can't get used to it, Tahir laughs. But it's wonderful, isn't it? I can call you from Berlin. Imagine that, she says, laughing too. In the background, children's voices scream. One uses actual words. Mine, give it back, mine. The other is just a high-pitched scream. How are they? Tahir asks. I'm losing my mind. Aya just started walking, so she's everywhere now, and Atta is trying to keep his toys away from her. It's a madhouse, she laughs. Walter is coming back tomorrow from his business trip, and I already can't wait to hand them over, she says, the tone of her voice light. It would be nice to see the kids next month, Tahir says, looking at the mosque. The structure seems to float above the hill. About that, Aisha says, can you bring me Mom's watercolors? All of them, please. That would be too heavy. There are like 7 or more, he says. No, not the frames. Take them out and roll them up. Oh, I can do that, no problem, Tahir says and takes a sip of his tea. You are the best brother, Tahir, Aisha says to the screams of her son. You wouldn't have said that when we were twins, he says. Remember, we used to fight like Aya and Atta. Where? Aisha says, laughing. What are you talking about? I mean, children, when we were children. Back then, I could feel you being my twin or something like that, he says, and looks into the distance, sipping his tea. Now, he pauses. The children have quieted down, and he can hear Atta saying, Aya, you can have this, okay? I will always be your twin sister, Tahir, Aisha says quietly. I know, and also, I don't know. I can't feel it anymore. I can't find you in myself, he says. They both pause and listen to the sounds around them for a moment. What about you, Tahir? Aisha says. How are you doing? Really? Tahir starts to say something, but what he says makes no sense. Disconnected words and sounds with no structure. Sorry. Tahir starts to say something, but what he says makes no sense. Disconnected words and sounds with no structure or essence follow the choppy line of his voice. He's trying to find the right words while also deciding if he wants to tell her the truth. Just say it, Aisha says, and Tahir suddenly remembers that she has always understood him better than anyone else. I am thinking about going back to Afghanistan with Ahmed, he says. No, Tahir, don't do it. Nothing good can come of it. Go back to college, finish your medical degree. She's trying to be convincing, but her tone is not focused. Her attention is elsewhere. The children are screaming again. Tahir imagines his sister waving her hand and bringing her index finger to her lips, but he knows that her children are too young to follow such a signal. As he waits for her to count them, something in him and around him moves. It's like a wave that rearranges things and leaves a new order. He feels himself disconnecting from Aisha. Not because she said don't do it, but because he said, I can't feel it anymore. I can't find you in myself. With these words, he has created a new reality. The disconnection is not a rupture, he realizes. It is the conclusion of something very gradual. It's like a coastline that erodes a little bit every year, eating away the land, expanding the way of the ocean. Thank you.
That was beautiful, and thank you for reading that to us. You know, one of the things that struck me on hearing this reading, and it certainly has occurred to me before, but it really hit home this time, is the line, I can't find you in myself. And to me, and perhaps to others, this seems to be one of the many problems that we as a culture face today. And that brings me to my question, which is about the idea of the other. So I wonder, why did you write about the other? And you certainly wrote very convincingly, and I don't mind saying I was terrified during my reading of this book, because of course, you know, an astute reader will know what the end is, but we won't understand the psychological issues behind the conclusion of the book. So what was it that drove you to write about the idea of the other, particularly in the environment of something that is such a political hotspot, 9/11?
So you are talking about To Kill the Other. That was the kind of first version of the book when we were twins. And the initial kind of incident and impulse was related to of me wanting to write about this, the concept of the other, was kind of born from the events of 9/11, from the attacks on the World Trade Center. What was interesting to me is to analyze a character or build a character that loses the connection of seeing himself in other people, losing the connection, but at the same time kind of organically becoming disconnected from other people, and why this kind of, I wanted to examine why it happens. And I wanted to see if in the end, I am able to construct a character that will show his humanity despite of his acts. So can we see humanity in people that commit terrible acts? And which is very difficult, of course. And my kind of initial assumption was that we are all connected, we are all twins, but there are reasons, often political reasons, when we lose the thread of connection, and we kind of cross over to the dark side. And when I say we, I mean humanity, people, on all sides of the conflict, because I wanted to sort of examine this possibility of what happens to someone who loses the connection, and if there is kind of a thread of humanity that we can see in each other after that loss.
That's a brilliant answer. And, so that of course raises, the trifecta that we're all trying to connect the lines. And it's, humanity, connection, this idea of understanding. How did you, as an individual, feel when you were writing this book? What emotions bubbled up?
Many of the scenes were difficult, of course, to write, because I examined sort of the state of humanity, and thinking about myself, also examining my own feelings. For example, examining what would have to happen in my life that would make me want to harm terribly another person, which was not easy kind of to answer for me, because I guess I don't look for conflicts, and I am not a person who enjoys kind of fighting with others to make it. And I think that I felt like if I can find in myself this kind of impulse that would show me that I am capable also of crossing to the dark side of life, then it will be easier for me to imagine the character. And I have to say that after many weeks of thinking about it, I came to the conclusion, my son was back then, when I started thinking about the project, my son was 7 years old, and I suddenly realized that if someone would harm my child, I would be able to become a monster, really. I had it in me to protect that was the only thing that I could imagine. And I think that people who have children probably understand what I'm talking about, that when you have a child, you would protect the child sort of more than you would protect yourself, in a sense. That there are different feelings that bubble up when we talk about our children, very different than when we talk about ourselves and examine what would have to happen to us to cross to the dark side of life. And so since I discovered this about myself, I felt like, okay, I can probably imagine a life of someone who is innocent, born into a wonderful family, and innocent and kind and studious and empathetic towards his sister, for example, to others also. And I was trying to kind of imagine a life that would change, that there would be this disconnection of losing the twin, but the connection to the bright side of life. And I think that I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
You're doing a really good job. I mean, you're exploring some deep emotional issues that we all contend with. And Max and I were talking about this, and we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now, because this book, When We Were Twins, is it's just so shattering in so many ways. We discussed the idea of spirituality, and I know Max, I'm going to let Max ask this question because she's far better equipped to answer spiritual issues than I am.
That's untrue. But I was so curious, Danuta, about your concept of spirituality in this book, and particularly the opportunities that Taher has to talk with people about spirituality. And my reading was that you were speaking towards or writing towards a sort of human spirituality, something that we don't recognize necessarily in structured religion, but something else. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Thank you. Yes, so I was kind of thinking about women, and I wanted women to, in this book, to become those spiritual beings. So there are several characters, women characters, that are very spiritual. There is a girl in Afghanistan in a dress with little mirrors that leads men to see the truth. There is Irene, a wife of Taher's best friend from Afghanistan, who is a Polish person, Marek. His wife comes from a very long line of Jewish women who were extremely spiritual. They possessed the power of changing evil around them into something good, which I thought would be important to kind of include in this book, that women, the givers of life, and we have births in the book also, are those who are protecting life and trying to kind of create a life that is that includes everyone. It includes also those who need to be pulled from the dark side to the side of light in life. And another women, spiritual women, we have a god in the book that is kind of made of two women that are homeless, and they are trying to explain to Taher connections between people and how we actually are connected, how we all are sort of, in a sense, twins, and the way we can see ourselves and the other is by looking in someone else, kind of like you can see only by looking in the chest of someone else. Then the chest, the god in the book carries a mirror. It looks like it's a little mirror that shows Taher's his face inside the chest or the heart of God. But they are also twins. So God is also the construct of twin to women. So the spiritual part of the book is kind of bringing the energy of light and the energy of unity and the energy of twinhood, in a sense, brotherhood, into the light, kind of pulling everyone into the light of life. And then, of course, we have different men characters who are either following the women or not. And so Marek, for example, even though he comes also from the war in Afghanistan, falls in love with Irene and kind of allows himself to be pulled by her energy. And when he finally leaves the dark side of light, the life of war in Afghanistan, and crosses over and is now tending to his twin children, little Julie and Marek, and enjoys life of a father and a husband. And one day he discovers that his wife actually has wings. He can see them sometimes in the dark. So he's sharing this also with Tahir. So Tahir is being presented with many opportunities to cross to the light side, including his sister, of course. But there are also dark sides, kind of the darkness is pulling him the other way. So there is this juxtaposition of both.
It's a really great answer. And, I'm struck, of course, by the idea of the light and the dark, especially given, and we talked about this a little bit before we started this conversation this evening, the idea of the light and the dark and the conflicts that are going on in the world today and how we navigate that. And so that brings me back to your role as a teacher. And I guess what I'm wondering is, when you talk to your students about things like this, if you're able to talk to them, because we know in some states you can't, if you're able to talk to your students about these issues, how do you frame the issues dealing with the idea of light and dark with the conflicts in the Middle East and in Ukraine? Conflicts that seem to be centuries old. And in Ukraine, of course, I'm dealing with the Russification of the Ukrainian population. In the Middle East, it's been a constant jockeying and battle for land and dominance and power and, let's be clear, agency and authenticity. When you talk to them, what do you say to them? Have they asked you about your book?
Well, I have to say that this moment in history, when Israel and Hamas are fighting the war in the Middle East, once again, it's very hard to discuss the subject because the wound is wide open and it's raw. So when for example, Jewish students, I have many Jewish students in my classes, come and talk to me after class, often in my office, during my office hours, about the people they actually are losing in their families, their cousins and friends that they have met studying in Israel. Young people are actually dying right now in Israel. So they come to me to talk about it. Also, because of very practical reasons, they simply cannot complete their assignments in time because it's just impossible. It's just too overwhelming. I have to say that all I can offer them is respectful space and listening. And I think that it's extremely difficult to bring up history, for example, and educate someone in moments like this. All I can do is to be there, honor their pain, and allow them to kind of have a safe space where they can talk about it. And unfortunately, I also heard from my Palestinian friends who are losing, of course, family members in Nablus right now. And it's, again, my approach is exactly the same. I am honored that they come to me and talk to me about it and share their pain. And I am here just to listen and to be for them, so they know that they can talk to me about it. But as you probably know, all nuance is completely lost at this moment. Everything is black and white. And that's why I think the best thing that we can do for our friends and family in Gaza and in Israel right now is to simply allow them to voice their opinions and be there for them on both sides.
Very good point. Listening is key to unraveling violence and conflict and war. But only if someone is willing to listen, and clearly you are, and your students are very, very fortunate. What advice would you have for someone who's about to tackle a book that deals with issues that are as complex and as fraught as the one described in When We Were Twins? And I'm just going to take a moment here and say, please, if you haven't purchased this book, it's really important to go out and get it. It's so well written. It will completely change what you think about what happened in the United States on 9/11. It offers a very wise glimpse into the issues that brought it to the shores of the United States. So what advice would you offer?
When I get this question, I always think about what Maya Angelou said, that the bird sings not because he has answers, but because he has a song. So my advice is I don't have answers, but my advice to my readers and to anyone would be to perhaps I would be honored if you would read my book, and I would be honored if you would send me an email saying that the book changed something in you, that there was a little shift, a little something, that you became a different person after you read my book. I guess then that would be something that I would love to hear from people. I have no answers, but I can only give you a story that imagines someone who goes through life kind of trying to find himself, not knowing that the only way to find himself is to look at the other person, to find himself in the other person. So
Because we are twins.
Because we are twins.
We are twins. And I'll just speak for myself here, and I'll say that I wept after reading this book. Not only is it beautifully written, but it opened the gates to more than tears. It opened me to an understanding that I felt but was not able to articulate. And so in that sense, I'm very, very grateful to you for having written this book. But part of me, and I suspect that there would be people in the United States, and what other country am I going to speak to, because here we are in the United States, who would be very, very angry with you for the sympathy portrayed in this book. What's your response to that?
I think that's the biggest challenge for all of us, is to see humanity in someone who commits a terrible act. But at the same time, I believe that any dialogue, the beginning of a dialogue, kind of fruitful dialogue, is possible only if we kind of start seeing each other as humans. Mm-hmm. When we see the humanity of another person, it is very hard to dismiss them. If we see how similar we are, it is very difficult to kill that person. Let's think about World War II. How were Jews portrayed by the Nazis? They were not portrayed as humans. They were portrayed as subhumans. The same happened to Poles. They were portrayed as subhumans. It's very easy for those involved in conflict to fight each other if they perceive the other person as is not human, really. They are compared to animals, to rats, and to pigs, and to all sorts of different kind of as far as removed from humans as possible. And I think that this is the main question and the main sort of problem, that we lose the connection because we sort of stop seeing each other's humanity. I mean, I am certain that this, on both sides of the conflict in Israel and Palestine, right now there are families with children who would be friends on both sides, who would be friends with each other if not for what is happening right now. If people were allowed to, yes, I guess, allowed to live in a world where they are seeing the humanity of another, we would have a different world. Someone might say that I am naive, but what other option is there available? Throughout centuries, we are repeating the same lessons throughout history that always end the same way, in conflicts and war. The history of humanity is the history of wars. When we study history, we study the history of wars, who won and when and how, right? This is the romantic in me, I guess, that believes that a different world is possible.
I believe with you, Max believes with you, and I would like to issue a challenge to everyone who's attended tonight and to those who are going to be watching this video a day or 2 days or a few months after. Buy a copy of this book, When We Were Twins, buy it and send it to someone that needs to have another look at humanity. Send it to them. Call it a holiday gift. I don't care what you call it, but people need to read this book so that they understand the complexity of human emotion, the idea of spirituality, what we as writers try to do, and how the power of the written word is critical to perhaps, and we can only hope, and I'm with you, Danuta. I'm a romantic at heart. I believe that if we push hard enough with the written word, with what we have to say, how we think and how we relate to one another, that change is possible, that maybe the history books won't be written about war, who won what war, who lost what war, and what city was bulldozed into the ground. So on that note, oh, wait, we have a question. Wait. The question is, given the Israeli leadership reference to Palestinians as human animals, what do you think is the connecting link preventing us humans from recognizing our shared humanity? That's a really good question from Bob Shea. Thank you.
That's a very good question, Bob. Thank you, and a very difficult question. You are asking what prevents us from seeing the humanity in others?
Yes.
Our
shared humanity, seeing our shared humanity.
Yes, I think that, well, if you think about studying history, like from, let's say, before the Dark Ages, before the medieval ages, when resources were very limited, and people, sort of, countries invaded each other they needed resources, basically. But we live and throughout history, right, things became better and better in the world, but not for everyone, right? There are many places in the world where we still see extreme suffering and violence and wars. And I don't know, I feel like we are taught the wrong lessons, in a sense, as humans, this is a great question and very difficult. When you think about how competition, for example. Competition is great because it leads to progress, right? It leads to discovering COVID vaccines. But then another dark side of competition is that you want to be better than someone else. So I feel like this ingrained in us, Robert, that we struggle with finding the right balance between empathy, offering enough empathy, but at the same time, cherishing maybe in us the streak that helps us to succeed in life. Does it make sense? There is a balance. I feel like there is a balance that we don't discuss often, and it's very hard to maintain on a personal level, but also kind of on a level of history and political levels at the same time. This is a huge question, and it's very hard there's too many layers to it. But if I would have to give you an answer, that would be that on the very individual level, we struggle with, as humans, and I struggle with it too, with competing with others and extending my empathy to others. Does it make sense what I am saying? Like those two kind of, they are not working together very well. I don't think so. But we carry those two, I think, opposing powers that are, and some of us are better in giving empathy. Some of us are better in the competing part of our soul and mind. But it's very difficult to have both in the same kind of like a balanced way. This is my answer for today. If I think about this question a little bit longer, maybe I'll come up with something better. But the question is basically too difficult to answer in like on the spot. But I hope that I'm giving you at least a little bit.
Spoken like a true writer, someone who really wants to think things through before committing to words. Two important things there: cherish and balance. I think I might print those out and put them above my laptop so I can see them every day. Another question came in: how does your Polish experience inform the novel? Is there a subtext that connects you to your own story?
Yes, thank you. Great question. There are several Polish characters in the book. Of course, they are my favorite characters. Irene and Marek and the children are probably my favorite characters. So definitely, yes. My own experience, yes, and it's a little bit subtle in the book, but I did draw on stories from my own life. For example, I'll give you one example. There is a story, there's a chapter in the beginning of the book about how the twins, Aisha and Taher, are born, how the doctor, Lila's, the mother's doctor, and anyone else. This is the year 1967, so medicine wasn't as advanced as it is today, and they were not kind of sure if she was carrying twins or maybe not. And I didn't guess any of it. I simply wrote a story from my own life. My mother had twins 3 years before I was born, and it ended a little bit differently for her because the twins lived, my sisters, Hania and Mariola, lived only 10 days and they died. But the delivery of the twins that described in the book is exactly what happened to my mom. Like, she wasn't sure she was carrying twins. The doctor wasn't sure. The one twin was born and everyone thought this was the end. And then she suddenly went to labor again after 10 or 15 minutes. And it was extremely traumatic. She almost died during the delivery, exactly the way it happened in the book. So I feel like sometimes I talked about it earlier in a different kind of meeting, where I feel like I am the depository of stories that my family entrusted in me and my friends entrusted in me. And sometimes those stories simply scream to be kind of told, in a sense that, like, I don't want them to be lost. I want them to have a place somewhere. And as a writer, the place that I can offer them is my writing. There are several instances like this in the book that are either related to my family, but also to Polish history. For example, there is, I don't want to spoil it too much, but the story of Marek's mother is also based on a true story from Poland. Marek fights the Soviets in Afghanistan, and there was a person from Poland who fought the Soviets in Afghanistan. His name was not Marek, but so it's also, there are kind of many instances where the book sort of there is a nod to many different stories from my family and the history of Poland in this book.
No, thank you so very much. We are so honored, and I do mean that. We're so honored that you spent some time with us this evening. And I would like to let people know, whether you're here this evening or you're watching this video later, that if you email us at Birch Bark, we would be happy to forward the questions onto you, Danuta, because your book raises so many questions. Buy the book, everybody, buy the book. It's well worth buying. And on that note, thank you everyone for coming this evening, and we'll see you at our next event. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.